July 4th, 1855, Tennessee. The sky already glowing red before the sun has even fully risen. Cicadas shriek in the trees. The ground smells of smoke from last night's fires, and the air itself feels heavy, swollen with heat and silence. Independence Day, they call it freedom. They call it liberty. But for Dinah, for the enslaved cook in the kitchen house, the word is only another kind of chain. She wakes before the horn sounds. She always does. The others stir in their cabins, children crying softly, a baby reaching for its mother's breast. But Dinah slips quietly from the pallet of straw, ties the grey rag around her head, and steps into the damp dirt. Her feet are wide, scarred from years of barefoot labor, but she walks with steadiness. The plantation is still half asleep. Smoke trails lazily from the chimney of the big house. Dogs bark once and then fall silent again. A whip leans against the porch rail like a forgotten flag. Somewhere beyond the trees, a rooster cries out, his voice ragged, as if even he is tired of announcing dawn after so many endless days. Dinah walks toward the kitchen house. It is separate from the big house, standing like a burned-out memory, its logs blackened from years of smoke. Inside, the air is always thick with grease, with old ashes, with meat blood soaked into the floorboards. This is her kingdom, her prison, her battlefield. Every day she rises to serve it. Her body is strong, 33 years built on hunger and labor. Her shoulders rounded from stirring, her arms thick with the strength of lifting iron pots. Her skin shines dark, glistening with sweat even before the fire is lit. A scar runs across her forearm, white and raised, from the time Carter spilled boiling water and laughed. She wears it like a mark, like a tally. The kitchen house greets her with silence. She breathes in the smell, yesterday's fat still clinging to the air, onions rotting in the corner, the sharp tang of iron. She begins her day not with words, but with fire. She bends low, strikes flint, coaxes flame. Soon the first crackle fills the silence, smoke curling upward like a warning. This is Dinah's world. The overseers will come soon. She knows their rhythm. Carter, the oldest, gruff voice like gravel, always the first to bark. Boyd, heavy-set, red in the face, carries his whip like it's part of his hand. Hellis, thin as wire, eyes sharp, cruel smile. Mason, with his yellow teeth and foul jokes. Reeve, the youngest, still smooth-skinned but eager to prove his cruelty. 5 names. 5 shadows over her life. They will want the Independence Day feast. They will demand corn cakes, pork fat, beans thick with salt, molasses poured heavy over bread. They will drink whiskey until their words blur, until their laughter fills the house like thunder. They will slap each other's backs and boast of freedom. Freedom, spoken with mouths full of stolen food. Freedom while Dinah bends and serves. But Dinah is quiet. Dinah is stone. She doesn't cry. She just works. She stirs the pot. She chops the onions. She kneads the dough. Her face gives nothing. Her eyes lowered, her voice only when required. To them she is nothing but hands. To them she is silence. Yet inside she remembers her sister Leah. Leah, with the soft singing voice, dragged to the whipping post one July morning, back split open until she never sang again. Dinah remembers her son Isaac, 7 years old, hair tight curls, eyes too large for his small face. Sold away one spring morning, gone in the space of a heartbeat, his cry swallowed by horse hooves and wagon wheels. The master said he would be spared. The master said Leah would be spared. But promises to slaves are like smoke. They vanish the moment you reach. Dinah carries these names in her chest. Leah, Isaac. She stirs the pot, but she stirs their memory. She chops onions, but she chops the betrayal. Every movement holds the weight of years. This morning the plantation smells different, sharper. The overseers are already drunk before the sun rises high. Their laughter cuts across the fields, mingled with the crack of whips as they order the men to gather wood for the bonfire. They are preparing for a day of excess, a day of flags and firecrackers, a day to celebrate freedom they do not grant. Dinah wipes her hands on her apron. She hears Carter calling her name. His voice drags across the yard like a chain. "Dinah, hurry, girl!" She answers with a nod, nothing more. She moves faster, not because she fears, but because she knows their pattern. Obedience is her shield. Silence is her knife. The kitchen grows hotter. The fire roars, the pot sweats steam. Oil shimmers, a thin layer of gold trembling on the surface. She feels the heat kiss her face, feels the sweat pool in her lower back. She doesn't flinch. She never flinches. They come into the kitchen one by one. Mason first stumbling, already grinning. "Independence Day, girl," he says, slapping the doorframe. His teeth gleam yellow in the dim light. "Let's see what freedom tastes like." Dinah doesn't answer. She keeps stirring. Reeve follows, spitting tobacco into the dirt at her feet. He laughs when she bends to wipe it. "Move quicker, woman," he sneers. She rises slowly, cloth in hand, eyes fixed low. She doesn't cry. She just bends. Boyd pushes through, heavy steps shaking the boards. He lifts the lid of a pot without asking. Steam blasting his face, he laughs. Hot enough to skin a hog. He doesn't know how true that is. Carter enters last, slower, his hat tilted back. He watches her with that look, the look that makes her skin crawl. He doesn't speak. He doesn't have to. His silence is its own kind of violence. Ellis lingers in the doorway, thin lips curled. "Make it quick, Dinah. The master wants his men fed before the speeches." She nods again. She doesn't argue. She doesn't sigh. She just stirs. But the pot isn't for them. Not today. The celebration builds outside. Children of the master run through the yard with flags, their laughter piercing. Shots ring in the distance as men fire rifles into the air. The smell of gunpowder mixes with roasting meat. Voices swell with songs of liberty. Inside the kitchen, Dinah's silence thickens. She feels the weight of years pressing in. The walls close, the air swelters. She hears Leah's voice in memory, soft as night song. She sees Isaac's eyes wide as dawn. The overseer's laughter rings like nails against her skull. The pot hisses. Oil pops. The sound is sharper today, louder, like a drum beat. Dinah stirs slower, her eyes narrowing. She doesn't cry. She just remembers. She just waits. Outside, the overseers shout again. They want their feast. They want their liberty. They want her hands to serve it. Dinah's hands tremble once. Only once. Then they are steady again. The iron spoon scrapes the pot. Metal against metal, a sound like teeth grinding. She whispers the names inside her chest. Leah, Isaac, Carter, Boyd, Ellis, Mason, Reeve. The day has only begun, but the fire is already waiting. The pot bubbles, the fire breathes, and Dinah's body bends in silence. But silence is not emptiness. Silence is memory. Silence is the weight of all the years that came before this Independence Day. Dinah was not born in Tennessee. She was born in Virginia, on a smaller plantation near the James River. She was born to a woman named Ruth, who carried iron scars across her back, and to a man she never really knew, sold before Dinah's memory could hold him. She grew up among the fields, chasing chickens when she was small, learning early that laughter was a luxury that could be taken at any moment. By the time Dinah was 12, she had already seen blood. She had watched her cousin Jonah whipped until his skin tore like wet cloth. She had heard her mother cry in the night, not from grief, but from a master's footsteps outside the cabin door. She had smelled the iron of chains as if it were part of the very air she breathed. Childhood was not innocence for Dinah. It was an education in pain. When she was 15, she was brought into the kitchen. They said she had strong arms, said her hands were steady, said her silence made her useful. She learned the rhythm of fire, the language of spice, the cruel expectation of service. She stirred while others ate. She cooked while others laughed. She cleaned while others celebrated. In the kitchen, she found small pieces of survival. She could sneak a burnt crust, sip the last drop of broth, steal a second of warmth near the fire when the cold gnawed through her bones. But the kitchen was also where the overseers lingered. Carter first laid eyes on her there, his mouth twisting into that smirk she would learn to hate. Mason's voice carried through the walls, full of jokes about women's bodies. Ellis would slam doors, testing her reaction like a man testing a chained dog. Dinah endured. Because she had Leah. Leah was her younger sister, soft voice, gentle hands. Leah who always found ways to bring comfort. A scrap of cloth turned into a doll, a hymn whispered at night, a smile that could ease even the hardest day. Leah had hair that shone in the sun, eyes that seemed to carry light. To Dinah, Leah was hope itself. They worked together side by side. Dinah cooking, Leah mending clothes, singing softly while her needle moved. Her voice was like cool water in the heat, like balm on an open wound. It was Leah who reminded Dinah that they were still human, still alive. even when the world said otherwise. And then came the day of the whipping. Dinah still remembers the morning. Hot, heavy air, the sky low with clouds. Leah had been accused of moving too slow in the fields. Carter dragged her forward, rope around her wrists. Dinah begged, whispered, pleaded. But begging was not allowed. Pleading was only weakness. They tied Leah to the post. Dinah was forced to watch. The whip cracked. Once, twice, again. The sound split the air, tore flesh, broke spirit. Dinah's throat ached from holding in her scream. She didn't cry. She just stood. She just memorized every lash. Leah's back never healed right. The scars rose like rivers. Her singing voice fell silent. She lived, but her light dimmed. She worked slower. She smiled less. And every time Dinah saw those scars, she felt them burn on her own skin. But worse was Isaac. Dinah bore Isaac when she was 19. A boy with eyes too big for his face, laughter too quick for a world so cruel. He followed her in the yard, clung to her skirt, asked endless questions. Why is the sky blue? Why do the men carry whips? Will I always be here with you? She answered as best she could. She taught him songs, Leah whispered. Taught him to find joy in small things. Taught him to stay quiet when danger loomed. She carried hope in him, carried the idea that maybe somehow he might survive to see freedom. The master promised once, Isaac would not be sold. Promised her because she worked so hard, because she never caused trouble. Dinah held that promise like a fragile glass, careful with every movement. But promises to slaves are lies. The wagon came one spring morning. Men with papers, men with coins. They called Isaac's name. He clung to her legs, crying, his small arms tight. Dinah begged. She offered to work double, to do anything. The master shook his head. The coins had already exchanged hands. They tore him away. Dinah remembers the sound. Not his cry, not her own, but the sound of his fingernails scraping against the fabric of her dress as he was pulled. That sound haunted her more than the whip, more than chains. It was the sound of loss carved into her bones. She never saw him again. Leah silent, Isaac gone. Dinah's world narrowed to fire and memory. She didn't weep openly. She didn't fight. She just carried their names inside her. Leah, Isaac. Every stir of the pot, every knead of dough, every scrape of iron was a whisper of their names. And the overseers? They laughed. They mocked. Carter called her empty woman. Boyd told her she should be grateful she still had hands to work. Mason joked about filling her bed himself. Reeve, young and cruel, spat tobacco at her feet. Ellis said nothing, his silence more vicious than words. They thought she was broken. They thought she was obedient. They thought her silence meant defeat. But silence was her shield. Silence was her knife. She was not broken. She was waiting. Years passed, but wounds do not fade. They fester. They grow. Every Independence Day became another insult. Another year of celebrating freedom, while Leah's back carried scars, while Isaac's laughter was only memory. And so, as 1855 arrived, Dinah felt the fire inside her grow hotter. Every day in the kitchen was another day closer. Every name called across the yard was another nail hammered into her resolve. She remembered Leah bent and scarred. She remembered Isaac torn away. She remembered promises broken, bodies broken, spirits broken, and she knew. One day the pot would not be for food. One day the oil would not be for corn. One day the kitchen would burn with truth. The overseers would never expect it, because Dinah never showed it. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just worked. She just stirred. She just waited. And now on Independence Day, with flags waving and guns firing, the fire inside her burns hotter than the fire under the pot. The wounds of the past have become her weapon. The scars of Leah, the absence of Isaac, the cruelty of Carter, Boyd, Ellis, Mason, Reeve, all of it has sharpened her into steel. They call it Independence Day, but for Dinah, it will be Judgment Day. The sun climbs higher. July heat presses like a hand around the throat of Tennessee. The plantation hums with noise, cracking whips, children laughing, men shouting as they hoist barrels of whiskey onto wagons. The smell of roasting hogs mixes with gunpowder, with sweat, with the sour tang of liquor spilling from careless mugs. Inside the kitchen, the air is heavier. Smoke curls thick, oil hisses louder. The iron pot trembles on its chain as if it already knows what is coming. Dinah bends low, steady as stone, her hands moving through rhythm, stir, scrape, chop, wipe. But inside her chest, the rhythm is changing. Her heart beats not with duty, but with decision. The breaking point does not always come with thunder. Sometimes it comes with a whisper, with a single gesture too cruel to ignore. It comes that morning when Carter steps inside the kitchen, his boots tracking mud across the floor she scrubbed at dawn. He leans close behind her, so close his breath drips sour on her neck. He places his hand on her waist, fingers pressing like claws. He laughs low. "Girl, after the feast, maybe you'll serve me more than food." Dinah freezes. The spoon in her hand shakes once, then steadies. She does not turn. She does not speak. She stirs the pot as if nothing has changed. But inside the line has snapped. Carter leaves, laughing to himself. But Dinah no longer hears his laughter as she once did. She hears it as a death cry already fading. She wipes her hands. She ties her rag tighter around her head. She looks at the iron pot, at the oil shimmering gold in the light. She whispers names: Leah, Isaac, Carter, Boyd, Ellis, Mason, Reeve. Her voice is low, almost a prayer, almost a curse. The breaking point is not just Carter's hand. It is all of it. The lashes on Leah's back, the cry of Isaac torn from her arms, the years of silence forced down her throat. The lie of freedom shouted outside while chains still dig into her wrists. The stench of hypocrisy, louder even than the smell of smoke. Dinah's silence hardens into decision. That afternoon, as the celebration swells outside, she begins her preparation. Not openly, not loudly. Quiet, careful, precise. She gathers what she needs. The iron pot, already hanging heavy, filled half with oil. She feeds the fire beneath it slowly, so it grows hotter and hotter. The oil trembling, then spitting, then hissing like a living thing. She tests it with the tip of her spoon. It pops, fierce, ready. She sharpens the butcher's knife on the whetstone, not for chopping pork, not for slicing bread. The knife wasn't for food. It was for flesh. She finds the thick wooden paddle scarred from years of stirring stews. She runs her hand along its splintered edge. They called it a cooking tool, but it was really a weapon. She lays out rags near the fire, soaking them in oil, knowing they could spark, knowing they could burn. Every move she makes is part of the transformation. From cook to executioner, from servant to hunter, from silence to storm. Her body is calm, her face expressionless. If anyone had looked at her then, they would see only a woman at work, preparing a feast for the men who call themselves free. But inside, she is already beyond them. She is already walking in another world. A world where Leah's back no longer bleeds, where Isaac's cry is answered, where Carter's hand never touches her again. The overseers come and go, barking orders, laughing, spitting. They don't notice her silence. They never have. To them, she is invisible. That invisibility is her cloak, her shield, her chance. Evening begins to fall. The sun droops, a swollen orange eye over the horizon. Shadows stretch long across the yard. The bonfire is being built higher, sparks already licking the air. The overseers are louder now, their voices thick with whiskey, their boots heavy as they stomp through the dirt. Dinah feels time narrowing, the moment coming closer. She steadies her breath. She remembers Isaac's small hand in hers, remembers Leah's broken voice. She repeats their names, Leah, Isaac. She repeats the overseers' names, Carter, Boyd, Ellis, Mason, Reeve. The rhythm of memory is the rhythm of vengeance. And then, just before the feast, Boyd comes into the kitchen. His face flushed, his belly swollen with drink. He slams his whip on the table, laughing. "Hurry, woman." The men are hungry and the master wants his table full. Dinah looks at him. For the first time in years, she lifts her eyes. Just for a second. Their gazes meet. Boyd's laughter falters. Something in her stare makes him shift his weight. But then he shrugs, snatches a piece of bread and stumbles out. Dinah lowers her eyes again. But inside she knows the time is now. The fire roars. The oil hisses. The kitchen has never been so hot, so alive, so ready. The breaking point is past. There is no turning back. One for Leah, one for Isaac, one for every scar, every lash, every broken promise. One for every lie of freedom shouted over chains. Dinah stands straight. She wipes her hands once more. She feels the spoon heavy in her grip, the knife sharp against her palm, the heat burning her face. She does not cry. She does not tremble. She just waits. The reckoning is coming. Night falls heavy on Tennessee. The July air, thick with smoke and liquor, hangs like a curtain around the plantation. Torches burn along the yard, shadows dancing long against the cabins and barns. The overseers gather near the fire, their voices booming, their mugs sloshing. Whiskey drips down their chins, pork grease shines on their lips, and laughter rings out like nails scraping glass. Inside the kitchen, Dinah waits. The iron pot boils, alive now, hissing and snapping, the oil spitting like venom. Shadows flicker across the walls, painting her face with firelight. Her hands, steady as stone, grip the long wooden paddle. The butcher knife gleams beside her. The soaked rags lie waiting, dark and glistening with oil. Every tool is ready, every movement rehearsed in her mind. She whispers the names again. Leah, Isaac, Carter, Boyd, Ellis, Mason, Reeve. The sound of boots thunders against the dirt. Carter enters first, swaggering, grinning, his eyes already glassy from drink. Behind him come Boyd and Mason, loud and red-faced, shoving one another, their laughter thick. Ellis drags himself in, humming tunelessly. Reeve lingers last, tall and watchful, his whip coiled in his hand even now, as if he fears someone might forget who owns the power. They fill the kitchen like they own it, like they own her, like they own everything the light touches. "Smells good, girl," Carter sneers, leaning close, his hand reaching again for her waist. This time, Dinah does not freeze. This time, she turns. And with the strength of all her years of silence, she thrusts the wooden paddle deep into the pot. Oil erupts. A storm of fire and liquid fury splashes upward, catching Carter square in the face. His scream is not human. It rips through the kitchen, high and broken as his skin blisters, melts, peels beneath the boiling oil. He claws at his eyes, his cheeks, stumbling backward into Mason, who curses, shoving him away. The smell of burning flesh chokes the air. Dinah does not flinch. She raises the paddle again, dripping with oil, and swings it like a weapon. The heavy wood cracks against Carter's skull with a wet final sound. His scream ends. His body drops, one. The kitchen erupts into chaos. Boyd lunges at her, grabbing for her arm, but she moves quicker. The butcher's knife flashes, sliding deep across his throat. Blood sprays hot and fast, painting the walls, the table, her face. Boyd gurgles, his eyes wide, his hands clutching uselessly at the wound before he collapses in a heap beside Carter. 2. Mason roars, staggering toward her, his fists clenched. Dinah does not retreat. She steps into him, ramming the paddle's splintered end straight into his mouth, driving it backward with brutal force. Wood splinters teeth, tongue, throat. He chokes, blood bubbling from his lips, eyes bulging as she shoves harder, deeper, until the paddle bursts out the back of his neck. He jerks once, then falls twitching on the dirt floor. 3. Ellis, panicked, grabs the whip from the table and snaps it toward her. The lash cuts across her arm, ripping skin, but Dinah does not falter. Pain feeds her fury. She seizes one of the oil-soaked rags from the fire, flames licking its edge, and hurls it at him. The rag clings to his chest, fire racing up his shirt, devouring cloth and skin. His shrieks rise high and shrill as he staggers into the wall, flailing, burning alive. The flames crawl over him, blackening his flesh, filling the kitchen with the stench of ash and death. He crumples, charred and silent. 4 Reeve remains, the last, the tallest, the cruelest. His eyes burn with fury, but not fear. He uncoils his whip, snapping it in the air, his voice a growl. "You devil woman, you'll hang for this." Dinah steps forward, blood dripping from her hands, her eyes unblinking. "Then I'll hang free." The whip cracks, slicing across her shoulder. She staggers but does not fall. Another crack. She ducks, the leather tearing through the air. He swings again, harder, but this time she surges forward, too close for him to strike. She slams the butcher's knife into his gut. Once, twice, again and again, each thrust a name, a memory, a scar avenged. Leah, Isaac, Reeve gasps, coughing blood, his whip slipping from his hand. Dinah's face is inches from his, her eyes burning like the fire still raging on Ellis's corpse. With one final thrust, she drives the blade upward into his throat. His body jerks, then collapses heavy as stone onto the others. 5. The kitchen is silent, save for the crackle of fire and the hiss of oil still boiling in the pot. Dinah stands in the center, her chest heaving, her hands dripping red, her face streaked with blood and ash. Around her the overseers lie broken, burned, gutted, beaten, silenced. She does not weep. She does not tremble. She only breathes, long and steady, like someone who has carried a weight for too long and at last has set it down. Outside, the celebration rages on, unaware of the slaughter within. Laughter and music drift faint through the door, mocking, distant. But Dinah does not hear them. She hears only silence. Blessed silence. She wipes the knife once more, sets it down on the table and turns toward the open door. Her work here is done, but the reckoning has only begun. The kitchen is still. The air is thick. Smoke lingers like a ghost. The oil pot bubbles low, almost quiet now, a simmer instead of a storm. The firelight flickers over bodies. 5 overseers, sprawled and broken, their faces twisted into masks of terror. Dinah stands in the middle. Her chest rises, falls, she listens, she waits. Outside, fireworks burst. Independence Day thunders across the Tennessee sky. Drums and fiddles wail. Men cheer, women clap, children shriek with laughter. The masters and their guests drink deep, never suspecting what silence now reigns inside their own kitchen. Dinah wipes her hands on her apron. The cloth smears red. She looks down at it, then tosses it aside. Her eyes search the floor, the knife, the paddle, the rags. All stained, all done. Tools of vengeance, not of labor. She whispers, low, a prayer without words. She does not cry, she does not tremble, she just breathes. But breath alone will not save her. A creak at the door. A shadow moves. It is Samuel, the boy from the cabins, no more than 12. Wide eyes, bare feet, skin slick with sweat. He had come to steal scraps, but what he finds instead is a battlefield. His lips part, but no sound comes. He stares at Dinah, at the overseers, at the fire. Dinah steps forward, kneels low, grips his shoulders. You saw nothing, child. Do you hear me? His head bobs fast, tears streaking his cheeks. He runs, vanishes into the dark. Dinah knows word will spread, not through Samuel but through others. Someone will stumble in, someone will notice the silence. The overseers are gone too long, their laughter, their cruelty, missing from the night. Suspicion will rise. She has moments, maybe minutes, not hours. She slips out the back door into the night air. The yard is lit by torchlight. Shadows of dancers whirl near the barn. She stays low, pressed to the earth, moving fast toward the cabins. Leah's cabin, Isaac's grave. She must see them once more. The cabins are dark but not asleep. Whispers thread through the wood, through the cracks, through the dirt. The enslaved have always whispered. Tonight the whispers are sharp, quick, urgent. Dinah enters and all eyes turn to her. Her hands, red. Her apron soaked, her eyes wild but steady. Someone asks, Dinah, what did you do? She doesn't answer. She doesn't need to. The smell of blood clings to her like perfume. The fire in her gaze tells the story. Silence falls, heavy, electric. A silence made of awe, of fear, of something like hope. Then Ruth, an old woman bent and grey, steps forward. She lays a hand on Dinah's arm. Child, you gave them back their names. Dinah swallows hard. Her throat burns. For Leah, for Isaac, for all of us. The room shudders with breath, with tears held back. A spark passes among them. Not celebration, not joy. Something older, harder. The taste of resistance. But sparks draw flames. Boots pound outside. Torches rise. Voices shout. The overseers have been found. Dinah knows it is over. The door bursts open. Men flood in, armed with rifles, with pistols, with rage. They seize her, drag her into the night. She does not fight. Her body goes limp, heavy as stone. She looks upward instead. The sky blooms red with fireworks. Independence Day. A sky of fire for a nation of chains. They chain her wrists, march her toward the barn. A crowd gathers, drunk and furious, faces twisted in disbelief. 5 overseers dead by a slave's hand. It is unthinkable. It is unforgettable. The master steps forward, pale and shaking. His voice cracks like a whip. "You will hang for this, Dinah." She lifts her head, her voice clear. "Then I will hang free." The words cut through the night, sharp as the butcher's knife had been. The enslaved hear them. The children hear them. The masters hear them. None will forget. They lock her in the smokehouse, alone. The stench of cured meat clings to the walls. The chains bite her wrists. She leans back, closes her eyes. For the first time in years, she sleeps without dreams of whips. Morning comes. The July sun rises heavy. They drag her out, bind her feet, march her to the oak tree at the edge of the yard. The rope swings from its branch. The crowd gathers again. Men, women, children. Overseers, widows weep. Masters scowl. Slaves stand silent, their eyes lowered but their ears open. They place the noose around her neck. Rough hemp scratches her skin. She does not flinch. She looks out over the field, where Leah once sang, where Isaac once played. She breathes the air one last time. She does not beg. She does not cry. She just says low but steady, "One for Leah, one for Isaac, one for all." The rope tightens. The world goes dark. Dinah is gone. But her silence is louder than their shouts. The story spreads, whisper to whisper, cabin to cabin, plantation to plantation. The tale of Dinah, who boiled her chains into weapons, who turned the overseer's feast into their funeral, who faced the rope without fear. Years later, the children still speak her name. The elders tell the story by firelight. Dinah becomes a shadow, a flame, a warning. The overseers had thought themselves eternal, but in memory only Dinah endures. If this story burns, it is because fire cannot be forgotten. The rope took her body, but not her voice. In the days after her hanging, the plantation tried to bury her name. Masters forbade it. Overseers threatened lashings. Her body was cut down, thrown into an unmarked pit beyond the field. They wanted silence. They wanted erasure. But silence became echo. Erasure became memory. At night, by the dim glow of coals, the enslaved whispered. They whispered Dinah, Dinah who boiled the oil, Dinah who struck the paddle, Dinah who silenced 5 men in one night, Dinah who spoke, "I will hang free." The children repeated it in games. The mothers wove it into lullabies. The old men carved it into stories told under the moon. One for Leah, one for Isaac, one for all. The refrain carried season to season, year to year. Even those who never saw her face carried her fire. The plantation never felt the same. Overseers came and went, but their steps carried caution. Whips still cracked, but with less laughter, less swagger. Fear had changed sides. For once it was the masters who looked over their shoulders, wondering if the kitchen smelled not only of food, but of vengeance. Word spread beyond Tennessee. Traders carried it downriver. Field hands carried it across county lines. By 1856, the name Dinah was spoken in hushed tones on plantations in Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama. Some doubted it. How could one woman strike down 5 armed men? Others believed it too much, believed it as a story crafted to give hope. But for those who needed hope, truth was not in question. By the outbreak of war in 1861, Dinah's story had become a kind of hymn. Some Union soldiers even recorded hearing it, sung softly by fugitives escaping north. She didn't cry, she didn't plead. She just boiled the oil they'd feed. One for Leah, one for all. Dinah watched the overseers fall. The words shifted, bent, changed with tongues and regions, but the fire within them did not dim. And when emancipation finally came, some remembered her first. They said, "We are free because she showed us freedom in the fire." But history written by masters did not record her name. No census carries her, no grave marks her. The archives are silent. Only whispers, only stories remain. Yet sometimes whispers are stronger than monuments. Dinah's story lived because the people would not let it die. In the 20th century, black writers began gathering oral histories. An old woman in Memphis recalled her grandmother telling the tale. Dinah boiled them in their own feast. A man in Nashville remembered his grandfather saying, "She didn't bow, she burned." Each telling differed in detail. but always the heart remained. Dinah rose. Dinah struck. Dinah refused the chain. Even now, on Independence Day, some families in Tennessee sit quietly at dusk. They tell the children, tonight the fireworks are for Dinah too. They remind them that America's freedom was built on chains, but chains could be broken even in fire. The oak tree where she was hanged still stands, weathered, gnarled, its branches stretch wide. Some say if you stand beneath it on a July night, you can still smell oil, still hear the crackle, still taste smoke. Not because her body lingers, but because memory clings harder than bark. Dinah never wrote a word. She never signed her name. She left no portrait, no diary, no letter, and yet her story survives, sharper and more alive than the names carved in stone of the men who tried to erase her. Because she did not cry. She did not beg. She just struck. She turned the tools of her oppression into weapons of her freedom. The paddle was not for stirring. The oil was not for feasting. The rag was not for cleaning. Each became fire, became vengeance, became history. She remembered every lash. She remembered every name. She remembered Leah, she remembered Isaac. And in remembering, she remade the world. So when we speak Dinah's name now, we do not speak of defeat. We speak of reckoning. We speak of silence that screamed louder than drums. We speak of blood turned into legacy. If this story burns in your chest, it is because fire cannot be caged. If this story haunts you, it is because memory walks longer than flesh. If this story frees you, it is because Dinah, a woman enslaved, claimed freedom in the only way left to her, by turning the overseer's feast into their funeral. This is her gift. This is her warning. This is her legacy. So the next time fireworks thunder in the July sky, remember Dinah, not because she begged for remembrance, but because forgetting would betray the fire. Dinah of Tennessee. Dinah who boiled the oil. Dinah who did not bow. Dinah who hanged free. Case closed.